Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
You were on board for Miami being your number 2 in the ACC. I wasn't. We can get to Pitt later in this episode. Miami also has an over-under of 9.5. They were 10-3 a year ago, won their first 9 games, lost to Georgia Tech, 28-23, to Syracuse to close out the year, 42-38, and then to Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, 42-41. So the losses were all close, but they had 3 of them. Definitely, I think, fell a bit short of expectations last year, being so they had the number 1 overall pick on their roster in Cam Ward, but had a great offense. It was truly a matter of the defense letting them down. You can go back a couple months ago. We did an episode with Manny Navarro of The Athletic, and he talked through some of the challenges they've got on the defensive side of the ball. So that is going to be, I think, foremost as part of this conversation. But I don't think it needs any introduction that Miami is one of the teams in this contender tier. They're absolutely an ACC and a playoff contender. It's a good team with a lot of experience, and they're going to be a tough out. I was surprised at how mixed I felt going through Miami this season and trying to form some opinions, but that's neither here nor there. This is a good team. There's a reason that over-under is 9.5.
Agree. Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out. Yeah, if we're going to talk about Clemson not having the variables at important places being a reason to feel comfortable saying, yeah, Clemson's going to be really good. Miami is inserting, at his best, a very good quarterback, if not excellent quarterback in Carson Beck, who has been talked about as a number 1 overall quarterback type draft pick when healthy. We'll see what his elbow looks like. You know, a torn UCL is nothing to sort of sniff at. So with all new receivers, new running back rotation, new quarterback coming off of a bad injury, new defensive coordinator, new secondary, hopefully a healthier defensive line.
That's a lot.
And still, the best of Mario Cristobal is somebody who can establish an identity, recruit really well, you know, make this a really killer roster, which it is to me. But still somebody who oversaw games that either got away from them, like Georgia Tech and Syracuse, or sort of surviving against teams that, if you're going to be my latex salesman, if you're going to be my ACC champion, we can't be going toe-to-toe for 4 full quarters against last year's Virginia Tech, all due respect, last year's Cal, the teams that they lost to, and sort of have everybody say like, oh yeah, he's got it. Like, we need to see much more boring Miami for me to feel in early to mid-July good about the Canes as like top 5-7 type team. Because last year they inserted star power. They inserted the number 1 overall pick. They helped to develop, obviously, into the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward. Damian Martinez was ready to roll at running back. And something that's sort of nagging at me, too, as I do feel very good about Miami, is the idea that, you know, we had this conversation about Georgia, like, what do they look like without Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey? That we just sort of took them for granted.
Yep.
In the best possible way. Was it Ron Popeil, to set it and forget it?
Yeah.
That was like the rotisserie thing, right?
Yeah.
Who better than Xavier Restrepo?
Yeah.
Like, 3rd and 7, we've got something for this. And he's going to catch a key pass when he's lying flat on his back on the ground, if that's what it takes. He was so dependable and such an easy target last year for Cam Ward that not having that known commodity, who absolutely could develop, but not having that going into the season with all that's new on that offense, that's a little concerning.
Well, look, there are 2 elements to this team that I think jump out to me. The first is Carson Beck, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
The second is defensively, which I can get into
in a second. We need to talk
about Corey Hetherman and the Canes defense. But as a starting point, having, I think, inarguably a top 5 line in college football sets them up pretty well.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at a lot of Mario Cristobal man ball this season. They are less proven at running back. But I think this offense sets up for, honestly, a little bit of what we saw out of Carson Beck a couple years ago at Georgia, where they would line you up and though they could throw, and they had Brock Bowers out running down the field, sometimes split out wide, they ultimately wanted to line you up and punch you in the mouth. And we know that that's a style of football Cristobal enjoys playing. I think we're going to try to see, or he's going to try to see if that's something that works this season. The offense will still be good. I think there will also be moments this season where it ends up feeling closer than it should, or almost like they're stuck in the mud if they can't get the ground game going against better teams on their schedule. I like Carson Beck. Carson Beck's obviously one of the top 10 quarterbacks at a minimum in college football, so I don't want to sell him short, but we also don't know what the elbow is going to look like. We've heard he's healthy.
Well, it's not even just that. It was also, he saw a lot of ghosts when he was healthy last year. The line
when
wasn't
they leaned
great at
on him
times
a little
at
bit
Georgia.
more.
Yeah.
When they leaned on him a little bit more to develop the passing game, and maybe part of that was due to the fact that Brock Bowers had left. Even still, though, it was not quite as bulletproof as I think we were used to seeing from Carson Beck.
Agree.
So that's definitely something worth noting. I think the offense probably is slower this year and not quite as dangerous. Still good, but different because the personnel is different. On the defensive side of the ball, I like Corey Hetherman. Corey Hetherman runs a 4.25. He comes down from Minnesota. You might be surprised to learn that it's more of a flexible, positionless, let's call it an attacking defense.
Sure.
And what's cool about what he does is he tends to adjust the scheme based on the situation. So in that sense, I think there's genuinely an opportunity here to take a pretty big jump forward with what Miami has back up front and in the secondary. Reuben, Bain, Akheem, Mesidor, David Blay, who they picked up from Louisiana Tech.
And they're deep there, too. They're deep along the defensive line. Yeah.
Hetherman's style of defense is going to require that Miami get better at communication, though.
Man, raising my hand right here. So can I.
So all of us
Absolutely
can.
Yeah.
If you've ever been married or in a relationship,
marriage
hand
adjacent,
goes up.
Sure.
Hands right up right now. I can hold it up the entire preview if you want.
Right. We talked about this, though, when we did our Miami show. Yeah.
We did. That was a
Manning.
big flaw for this team last season under Lance Guidry, who you also might be surprised to learn likes running an attacking, aggressive defense.
Of course.
He tended to put a lot of his stress on the safeties to be in the right spot. And TLDR, there were a lot of blown coverages last year. I think that demonstrate that communication was definitely lacking. So that, I think, is job one. From afar, as I report to you a Miami preview, not having seen any of the spring practices, I think they got to get the communication issues sorted out. I do think the defense will be fine. I actually think the defense gets better. So my read on Miami, defense better, offense a little bit slower and slightly worse. I do not see them beating Notre Dame in week 1. I don't see them beating Florida in week 4.
That's a Sunday night, the Notre Dame one?
Sunday night game, correct.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend. Continue.
Could see them losing to a team like a Louisville.
Whoa.
I do think they're losing to Pitt to close out the year because I'm just like Pitt superfan number 1 here. I've got Miami at like 9-3 or 8-4 this year.
Yeah, I get it. Just with the losable games that they put on film last year and the games they actually did lose with what they were advantaged with on offense and, as you mentioned, disadvantaged with on defense, I think the defense is going to be better. So the question is, if they have a good but not all-time Miami offense, which is what they were last year, they were the number 1 offense in America, Cam Ward, bringing back Shannon Dawson, of course, to run that offense. And if the defense is noticeably better, I don't know what that ceiling looks like, but you'd think they'd be healthier along the defensive line, experienced at linebacker. They went into the portal, especially for the back end of the secondary, made change at defensive coordinator, which a lot of people are optimistic about. So if they're a top 40 defense, say,
right,
and they're a top 20 offense, which I think is reasonable, depending on, we haven't talked about replacing their top 4 pass catchers. We talked about Xavier Restrepo, but it's also, Jacoby George, guys like that. They're going to count on youth, and especially like what Cam Ward was able to count on with how deep they were at tight end and no longer are in the same way as they were last season with Elijah Arroyo. And I think Cam McCormick has finally exhausted his eligibility.
His 9th year. Yeah.
There's just a lot of questions there. So the offense is going to fall a little bit, of course, and the defense should come up. I think they're 10-2-ish again. I think there may be I think if you were going to say you feel better about Notre Dame, on the road to open that season, August in South Florida. Okay, that's fine. Notre Dame was playing for a national championship last year. Miami very much was not. But CJ Carr's first game starting, South Florida. Okay.
Notre Dame's going to win that game.
Okay.
They're going to win that game.
They came out very impressively in a hostile environment to start the season last year against A&M. So give Marcus Freeman credit. He had that team ready to start the season.
Now, I think it could be lower scoring.
Sure.
I think it could be kind of ugly. I think if it devolves into a game like that, it benefits Notre Dame.
Sure.
But my money right now is on Notre Dame winning that game. I think they're the better team.
Okay. Miami started the season really nicely last year as well. Like we should say, they absolutely
9 straight wins.
Well, it's not just 9 straight wins. It's early on going to Gainesville in one of the probably 3 most electric environments in the sport. I don't know why I said it like that, but I stand by it. And obliterated the Gators.
Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't a bad Florida team last year. So I don't know. I'm somewhere in that 9-3, 10-2 range, but I think they'll get enough of those key wins. The schedule sets up pretty nicely. You mentioned that Louisville game. I think they have mutual buys before that game. And so the quarterbacks faced for this Miami schedule are on the trickier side, but even still, because it's like DJ Lagway and Kevin Jennings and Kyron Jones and Miller Moss and obviously CJ Carr. We'll see what Steve Angeli and CJ Bailey and Eli Holstein are like, but it seems like the floor is pretty high in terms of quarterbacks faced in this moment. So yeah, I'm 9-3, 10-2. What's the number? What the Vegas number is? 9. I would take the over.
Okay. Yeah, I'm under, but I think it's right around the number. That's what they do.
Yeah. So here we are.